Australia's closest neighbour is Papua New Guinea, or PNG. It contains the largest areas of tropical rainforest remaining in the southern hemisphere. In the 1980s, multinational logging companies were quick to move in, leaving a trail of environmental and cultural devastation. In 1989, BARNETT, Chief Justice of the PNG Supreme Court, conducted an inquiry into the logging industry there.
It was really out of control, that's how I would describe it. The people who were benefiting were the foreign companies. The method of extracting the logs was absolutely reckless. There were theoretically environmental conditions attached to the permits, but these were broken almost as a matter of course. In fact, all the companies were breaking the environmental conditions, ignoring them really. There's no quantification possible, but you use terms like disastrous to describe what was happening. Really, there was hardly any control at all, certainly no effective controls over what the companies were doing, and their aim was to maximise profit. They made lots of promises, but they mostly broke them. They were to build schools, aid posts, assist with local economic development. The standard performance of those promises was to break them. The contract agreement was universally unfair. There were cases, I remember one case which was pretty extreme, but the people got out of a $200,000 shipment. By the time everything came out, the local owners actually got $1,848, and they had lost the treasure.
In the mid-80s, RIC volunteers travelled by canoe to the villages being wooed by the logging companies. They carried a portable generator, a slide projector, and pictures of forests devastated by the companies.
We realised that in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands we were dealing with some of the financially poorest people in the world. Unless we could address the legitimate aspirations of these people for some kind of benign, sustainable economic development, clearly we weren't going to be able to protect those forests for very long.
Some tribes had been able to get hold of a small portable sawmill, the walkabout sawmill, which allowed them to log their own forests without causing anywhere near the damage associated with conventional methods. The multinational loggers were unable to get a foothold amongst these people because they had a means of utilising their own timber resources and could get a much higher price for the sawn timber that they produced than the loggers were offering for the raw logs.
We wondered if the conservation of a large part of those doomed rainforests could be achieved by providing the tools and training for the sustainable harvesting of the rest.
So to get in front of any logging company in Papua New Guinea means you're on the cutting edge of saving the best forests on the planet. So that was our main concern, was getting in front of the biggest logging companies we could find and stopping the bastards.
So up here, it's dangerous. It's no good it's down there either, because you want to be able to look up when you're cutting.
Mark Broomhall of Nimbin, a veteran of 10 years rainforest activism and an expert in holistic forestry, directed a team of Australian volunteers.
So you guys know about cutting trees.
So we had a look at the environmental, social and economic implications of the portable sawmill operations in both the Solomons and Papua New Guinea. I'd been a volunteer for the Rainforest Information Centre for 5 years at that stage. We worked basically from the heart, and it was just our passion because it was a job that had to be done. And it was quite ironical to come to terms with cutting down the trees to save the forest.
Roads are the most destructive part of logging in the tropics. The walkabout sawmill requires no roads. It can be carried to and from a tree that has been felled, causing very little damage to the surrounding forest. Once the sawmill and resulting timber have been removed, the clearing is easily regenerated. The much higher end price of the timber and the low impact of the operation means that only a fraction of the forest is disturbed and the overall environment is unaffected.
The cottage industry size, the scale of it, the economics of it was perfectly suited to the scale of tribal existence.
The real beauty of the walkabout sawmill projects and operations was that the people could utilise their forest resource, work collectively, have autonomy within their own structure, and finally, and most importantly, protect the forest.
The RIC's work had been initially funded by the Australian Council of Churches and private foundations. From 1989, the Australian Government Aid Agency became the major funder.
Our first actual intervention with the walkabout sawmill was with the Zia tribe, who live on about 200,000 acres of pristine, lowland tropical rainforest on the Morribee coast. They were being wooed by a large multinational logging company, and the company was so confident of the success of their negotiations that they had already built a wharf and a fuel dump. But we managed to get in ahead of them, and instead of signing with the company, the Zia signed a contract with the Rainforest Information Centre. In exchange for 3 small portable sawmills and training in ecological forest management, they agreed to put 99% of their forests off limits to any kind of logging. They would make their living sustainably from the remaining 1%. In this way, they could expect to get about $450 a cubic metre for their sawn timber, as against $3 a cubic metre that the company had been offering for the raw logs.
1, 2, 3.
The next step was to design a forestry management plan that was truly sustainable.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So it was my main concern was anything that we wrote had to safeguard all the dynamic of the forest, the integrity of the forest itself and the whole ecosystem, so that anything we come up with would never jeopardise the forest.
Working with Sasa Zibe from the Village Development Trust, a management plan was developed to mimic the natural dynamic of the forest. By carefully observing the succession of different native trees and their varied roles within the forest's ecosystem, and attempting to recreate this, the management plan ensured that the logged areas were fully regenerated.
So yeah, the challenging thing was to write in all the checks and balances, so you could actually go into a forest and if you took out this tree or that tree, you'd be able to then predict what would happen.
The Village Development Trust and the RIC team strive to ensure that as well as having such little impact on the forest, the project was not a disruption to the existing village life and social structures.
The project was to be a community-based operation where not one village, family or one individual benefited from them, so that the profits and the resources would go towards community projects such as schools or community centre or whatever they wanted.
This plan now every so belong all community. Yeah, alongside.
Okay, but not too loose.
In the 11 years that the RIC was actively involved, hundreds of Indigenous people were trained in ecological forestry, and over 1 million acres of rainforest was protected.
Go back. Go back. 4.5.
Sasa Zibe and the Village Development Trust continues the work to this day.
So, couldn't have done it without Sasa.
Als mi tokim je finish, mi oblos tokim development. Mi rak paine mara pra road development.